Right. And we're live. All right. Hey, howdy, everybody. Welcome. Welcome if you're watching on Banner and Backbone. Welcome if you're watching at the Firebrand Project, wherever you're watching from. Thank you so very much for joining me today for another show, another Firebrand report. Today we're doing the Africa Spotlight. So we're going to check in on a couple things going on in Africa. We're going to take a look at the region, what's going on, and we'll give you guys I'll give you guys my analysis. We'll talk about what it all means and what it means for you wherever you are in the world. So definitely a little bit of an interesting discussion today for sure. In particular, we're starting to see the reasoning for all of this foreign meddling. Those of you who have been with me long enough, for a while now, you usually figure it out pretty quick. But if you haven't been with us already for a Firebrand report, I encourage you, please go ahead and hit that like button, number one. The second thing you got to do is make sure you subscribe. Click the Chiron up there in the corner, top left. You can go ahead and subscribe to both me and Banner and Backbone, who I am cross-streaming with today, my good friend Nick Perro, who's put together this fantastic media platform for folks to come and get their information. So I'm absolutely very pleased to be working with you guys today to get you guys this kind of information. So with all of that said, we got quite a bit to cover today, and we've also got a little bit of a new format for the newsletter. I got some feedback. I did some, I had some people look at what I was doing and what was working and what wasn't working. And so we're going for a much shorter newsletter in general, as well as the analysis. If you guys want the analysis, you got to come to me on the lives. That's where you're going to get it. So we'll do one newsletter. It's going to be attached to the live, and the newsletter will be attached the way it was before. But for the amount of time and effort that that I was putting into this really long newsletter, folks just really weren't into it, and I can still get you guys all that information here in this live. So that's just a little bit change. If you guys are been watching for a while, you're not going to lose anything. You're still going to be able to get everything that you want to look at anyway. And Natasha is with us today as well. Natasha was on the Friday rant last week. Brilliant individual. And we were lucky to have her. So if you didn't see that episode, make sure you go and check that out as well. But with all that said, make sure you guys hit the heart button. If you're watching the recording, make sure you hit the heart button. And did I say share the live? Leave a comment. But I said last week, at the end of last week, that in the newsletter that we were going to do an analysis. I admitted that, and I challenged you guys to go ahead and give me your thoughts, your analysis on this. And so we did have one person respond to that newsletter. And so I am going to go ahead. I want to shout out Barbara for responding to that newsletter and actually giving us a little bit of an analysis. So what we covered last week, I just want to say thank you very much, Barbara. And I think you're right on the money. So, it's really quite, it's good to see you guys doing what you're doing. So I really appreciate your insight, and I encourage each and every one of you, if you're watching this recording or if you're watching, now live, come back when it's ready and share your analysis. I would love to see what you guys think, and I encourage you to do so. So if anyone else is having any issues in terms of visibility, let me know. I do see a comment or two down there, but if for whatever reason that is the case, let me know in the comments. But without further ado, friends, let's go ahead. We're going to hop into today's report. We're going to take a look at everything there is to look at, and we'll go ahead and go through, what's going on in Africa. So I've said this before, but I really do think Africa is really important, because for none of the press that Africa gets for its unending sufferings, it's incredibly important to the global supply chain, what happens every single day, what happens here in America, and it's becoming more and more clear that, these people in control in America, they do care. They do care quite a bit. So they're meddling and whatnot. It's we're seeing the model, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. I have four different regions, okay, that we're going to discuss. So we're going to talk about Nigeria. We're going to talk about Sudan and South Sudan. We're going to talk about Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Tigray, and we're going to talk about the DRC and M23. Now, there's a lot more going on in Africa, but the reality is there's just too much going on for me to even cover in one day. And I want to make sure I get you guys all the context you need. So we'll go ahead and I want to start really quickly in Nigeria, and we're going to go over what's going on there. And from that, we're going to continue to kind of expand throughout the newsletter. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to hop into the report. And thank you guys for joining me. If you're just now getting here, hit the heart button. Let's see those heart scrolls. Let me know where you're watching from. And here we go. My friends, it is February 16th, 2026. I am reporting to you from the fascist states of America, and the world is on fire. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Firebrand Report, everybody. African Spotlight. So the United States military has decided that they're going to deploy an additional 200 troops to Nigeria. This is coming after a sweeping wave of extremely violent attacks. The most recent, the worst being over 170 people were killed as a little over a week ago in a vicious attack by Boko Haram and its supporting elements, as well as a more recent attack that I'll tell you guys about today. But so the United States military, they've gone out ahead and said that in the next coming weeks, you will see 200 troops deployed to Nigeria. This is part of them expanding a counterterrorism operation that goes all the way back to when they bombed Nigeria on Christmas. That was Trump's. I'll never get over that, honestly. When he bombed Nigeria for Christmas, like, are you serious? Like, you can't wait. Like, these guys are sick. But so this was all kind of started and goes back to this Christian genocide narrative that's total crap. But it is we're seeing continually there more and more involvement in Nigeria, and so we have a spokesperson with the Nigerian government. They confirmed that they will not engage in combat and that the assistance that was requested was for training on bases and whatnot. The commander of AFRICOM, Commander General Dagvin Anderson, he indicated on February 3rd that a small team of military officers was already there. We already knew about that. And so they had already been in contact with Nigerian officials about counterterrorism efforts. He also met with the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu and other security officials in Abuja on February 8th. And this deployment is part of the broader security agreement that they've been working on since November 2025. That's the narrative we're getting here. And so this is really all just continuing the kind of weird, kind of pushy almost U.S. intervention in Nigeria that comes with this narrative of the Christian genocide. And as things got worse on February 3rd, we reported on this. There was 170 people killed in Nigeria, in which the Nigerian military launched an offensive called Savannah Shield. Boko Haram is still pushing back on them pretty effectively, and you're seeing a lot of folks displaced across Nigeria. So, it was the Wall Street Journal that told us on the 10th that these 200 troops were going to go over there. So we'll see what that looks like, but doesn't seem like they're going to enter into a combat role. A little bit of smoke and mirrors. But however, very recently, we saw 32 more people killed on Saturday in Nigeria, targeting the Tunga, Makere, Konkoso, and Pisa villages, and this is part of the surge of violence we've been seeing before. Um, there were at least 26 killed in Concasso, where they actually set the police station ablaze, as well as other things. So the Nigerian government is really struggling to, they launched this offensive, uh, Savannah Shield, and they're still struggling here. And a quote from within the village is totally scary shit, guys. The bandits stormed our town around 3 a.m. local time, riding so many motorcycles while shooting sporadically, beheading 6 people and killing others. They set shops on fire, forced the whole village to flee, Ibrahim said. Another witness who requested anonymity said the attackers, riding more than 200 motorbikes, swept through the area targeting the villages. I mean, Nigeria, they just don't, they just can't handle it, right? This is not abnormal. I mean, these countries are struggling to deal with these insurgencies, and 200 troops for US training. I mean, that's not really the whole story, but the reason the United States is engaged in Nigeria is actually a lot more complicated. And we'll kind of talk about that later, because I've been digging around trying to kind of figure out what's going on here, because we are actually seeing a lot more US intervention. The no wars presidency is anything but. In fact, the United States appears to be embroiling itself in Africa more and more week by week. So as the situation deteriorates over there, America seems to want to be more and more involved. So this is pretty interesting stuff coming out of Sudan. Never good news in Sudan, unfortunately. But the African Union and the Peace Security Council, they rejected the RSF as it tried to establish a parallel government in Sudan. We know all about the RSF. They are war criminals. They are backed by the UAE. They are some of the worst people on the planet, and they happen to be kicking some serious ass in Sudan. It's very unfortunate. So this is coming as Sudan is really struggling with this fragmentation, this civil war. The Sudanese armed forces are still locked in combat. Perceived victories are usually, we saw a victory in Daling, where they declared they lifted a siege, and then within days you have RSF drone attacks that are absolutely devastating the region, blowing up all the humanitarian aid. So the humanitarian crisis is just really bad over there. And the African Union essentially said their government couldn't be, because they had committed a shitload of war crimes, which is true. They have committed many war crimes. So not surprising in that sense that we're not seeing anything coming out of them, and they should absolutely not acknowledge the RSF as a parallel government. The United Arab Emirates, they would love that, but I don't think it's going to be that easy for them. We're getting this, of course, from the Sudan War Monitor, so I really like them. I think they do very good reporting, and they're actually here on Substack, so you can always go and read up on Sudan War Monitor, and it's going to be linked in the newsletter under this video. So if you guys kind of want to know what's going on, we can absolutely do that. But there's a lot of really kind of the more significant, I think, change here in the last several weeks is what's going on in South Sudan. Because we've seen South Sudan start to enter into a state of civil war. We were covering that as that was ongoing, and it's definitely escalating to the point where, that is a conflict that we're not going to see stop. I'm fairly certain that the momentum is there, and these two guys, that you have two people who don't want to share power, and South Sudan's going back to war. Just unfortunately is the way things have been going in Sudan. It's just not. It's not one of those places where you're going to see things kind of stop. It's one of those places where you're just going to see things heat up and up and up and up. And I believe that we're going to continue to see that there as well. So, the biggest thing here, though, and I'll share kind of the maps here, because you guys know I like my maps. So we'll look at this together here. So what you can see on the screen, I'll swap it with myself here, and we'll zoom in together. So what you're looking at here is going to be, this is the whole Blue Nile. This is the Blue Nile state here in the bottom right-hand corner. And the issue here is that the RSF is starting to work with the forces in South Sudan. So the South Sudanese military and the SPLM-IO, which is the opposition faction, uh, they have been fighting in South Sudan in large scale battles for the last week or so. There was a big offensive that was launched in December of 2025. They captured a lot of bases, towns in South Sudan, and the tensions have been getting worse and worse. We covered going to don't spare anyone, the old people, the dogs, the chickens. I mean, these guys are sick, and so ever since the leader of the SPLMIO, he was put on trial by the sitting president there. It's all kind of gone to shit, and now they're they're in the process of killing each other, um, relentlessly. But what's interesting here is that the opposition forces, some of the forces here in South Sudan, they are actually allowing the RSF to operate within South Sudan, and this allows them to circumvent certain areas where the SAF is, and actually attack the Blue Nile state, which is an important state. And we're going to talk a lot more about that because there's a lot going on kind of around the Blue Nile state. But you can see here that South Sudan, you have the RSF, and they've been able to come into some of these places here in South Sudan and make these attacks in the Blue Nile state, which is effectively getting all the way around. A lot of the fighting here is in the Kordofan region here, right? So this is pretty it's a whole new front, and it would allow them to open up a whole new front. And for those of you who are any war buff in any capacity or a student of history, you know that anytime you open up more than one front, your ability to win goes down dramatically. So the Rapid Support Forces, they're leveraging their presence in South Sudan to strengthen ties with President Kiir's administration, who is currently the sitting guy. He's crazy. He nominated a dead dude to the board that's supposed to negotiate the peace deal. He's crazy. And so, they're using the region under his direction, allowance, right, to build supplies and bases and move things around. Meanwhile, the SAF, they're saying and viewing, of course, RSF's actions as a threat, which is leading them to support the opposition. And the SAF has accused South Sudan of facilitating these operations. So, that's really how it is. Unfortunately, Egypt supports the SAF. So Egypt is backing the SAF, the Sudanese Armed Forces, and the UAE is supporting the RSF, as well as Ethiopia. And we're going to talk about that too, because this whole little region you're looking at, right, this little tiny region where all this is going on is really important. This Blue Nile state, things are really heating up over here. And before we can go really any farther, it's important that we address the humanitarian issue. Not looking good for South Sudan. Unfortunately, there's already, the UN is saying that the battles in Zhangli in South Sudan has already displaced 300,000 people. There's already 450,000 are already facing acute malnutrition. Aid organizations have criticized South Sudan for starving and killing their people. I mean, yeah, and the World Food Program was forced to halt their operations due to violence and aid workers being swept up in the violence. So, Sudan in general is just, it's not moving in the right direction, particularly South Sudan. The faster this speeds up, the less likely that things are going to wind down. So, we do have very marginal. I mean, these are very weak political efforts. President Cyril Ramaphosa, he urged an end to the violence in South Sudan during the African Union's ad hoc high-level committee for South Sudan and Ethiopia. Why? Like, we're gonna talk about Ethiopia, but like the African Union is so backwards, guys. Like it's so weak. So, he's basically saying he was calling for peace. He was calling for elections in South Sudan. He said all these things need to be done. words are words, right? Like, not does not appear that any of those things are going to happen. I cannot imagine or even really think of a world where there's an election in South Sudan right now, even in the near future. I mean, I don't see a world where there's elections in Sudan at all. But now we got to talk about Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Tigray, because this is one of those places where we could actually this could be one of those conflicts that really rewrites the current situation geopolitically. And I do genuinely mean that in that this is one of those conflicts that can go from, a regional war with Sudan, and you look at where Ethiopia is, Eritrea, and this region in question, Tigray, it's very concerning in terms of regional stability. So, what we have right now is the Ethiopian federal government. They're moving resources into the Tigray region. So they're redeploying forces from Amhara and Oromia regions in response to recent clashes with the Tigray's People's Liberation Front, the TPLF, and then the TPLF's military, the Tigray Defense Forces, or the TDF. They launched offenses against Ethiopian armed forces and allied militias in late January. Okay, so this is an ongoing internal kind of conflict, very light comparative to the way things were. The Tigray War was one of the most violent. I believe it was over 400,000 people were killed in the last flare-up. So it's a lot of ethnic stuff as well, ethnic tensions between two different groups. And so when we're looking at Tigray and this region, it's really important that we understand that this 2022 peace agreement was made outside of, without consulting Eritrea, even though Eritrea was actually helping Ethiopia originally fight the TPLF, but things change. And this is a movement where they're sacrificing certain regions. They're sacrificing the ability to operate in certain regions to move troops towards Tigray. So they clearly think that something is going to go on here. We talked about it last week, how Ethiopia is, accusing Eritrea of, helping the TPLF, and so we're seeing that, and it's definitely going to continue. I think getting more and more intense in the region for sure. It doesn't seem like one of those times where we're gonna get to kind of, we're getting to a point in the world where no amount of peace mediation talks between all of these people is going to stop these people who really want to fight, right? So they really, really, really want to fight. And so in that sense, like, it's really just not going to slow down. And so Eritrea is likely supporting the Tigray's People's Liberation Front and may be involved in a broader conflict in Tigray. If something goes up in Tigray, we could see a alliance that has been formed. This was since early 2025, despite the fact that they actually fought each other. Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki has pledged to protect the TPLF against Ethiopia, while Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has threatened to annex Eritrea's port of Assab. Meanwhile, the Amhara ethno-nationalist Fanos militias are exploiting troop movements in Tigray, potentially coordinating with Eritrea and the TPLF, and have launched offenses in Amhara, capturing key towns and attacking Ethiopian National Defense Forces. Okay, this is not uncommon. I mean, a lot of these African countries, they say like they're a sovereign state, but they're literally dealing with like internal militias that are constantly taking territory. Like, so you can see here. I'll go ahead and blow this up for you. So here you go. This is from my critical threats. The links and everything are going to be in the newsletter at the bottom here. But you can see they're moving these troops up into this Tigray region here. There's Eritrea. And so, they they're getting ready for something. And when you're stripping other regions where you have insurgencies, it means it's more important to them to be able to fight here than turn around and deal with these other insurgents later. But from a pressure perspective, it's insanely tense over there, and I just don't. It's getting more and more intense as the days go by here, and so we can get a better idea, especially here when we look at this map, because what this is going to show us here is we're looking at a map here, and this map is going to show us the wider region of of Ethiopia. So we have Eritrea here at the top border. You have the Amhara region where they've removed these troops, where they're dealing with these insurgencies. And then Addis Ababa is here as well. So what they're really interested in is access to the Red Sea and the port here. So that's really their primary concern. And this Tigray region is directly bordering Eritrea. So that's where this conflict is going to be. The thing about this war in Tigray is it's not necessarily a regional conflict. This is about a broader battle that we're seeing taking place across North Africa in the Sahel region, which is control over the Red Sea. Sudan's war is very similar. They want to dominate Sudan. Sudan has a lot of coastal access as well. Fairly a reasonable amount of coastal access, as well as a lot of very rare earth minerals and valuable things in that region. So, the UAE, which is engaged in supporting Ethiopia, they've provided a lot of support during the Tigray War. Egypt is backing. Egypt views Ethiopia as a threat, has strengthened its ties with Eritrea, including naval deals to get the Egyptian Navy in the port of Assab that is being threatened by Ethiopia because they think it's their divine right. I'm literally quoting the guys here. They're saying it's their divine right to have access to this port. So just the delusional dictator syndrome, right? The external powers backing here would be you'd have Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Eritrea on one side, in the Sudanese armed forces, and then you would have the RSF, you would have the UAE and Ethiopia on another side, with potentially Israeli or some. It's weird, it's messy over there, but I think Israel and UAE are working together in some capacity here. But you could basically just see the war in Sudan absorbed into Ethiopia and Eritrea, right? You go from having a conflict in Sudan to a conflict that's in Eritrea, Tigray, Ethiopia, and Sudan. And we know that Ethiopia is training troops for the RSF right next to that Blue Nile region that we were talking about earlier. We talked about this last week. There was a massive base there that could hold up to 16,000 troops, super huge. And it could have massive impacts on the region, especially the Blue Nile state, where the SAF is already fighting on the western part of the country. If they had to shift eastern, it could open up a whole new front, and you go from having a concentrated war, or within Ethiopia, within Sudan, to a larger regional war where the RSF effectively becomes a regional army in a larger proxy conflict. So, we haven't really seen any decisive battles. I mean, it's just very much a stalemate. And as South Sudan evolves as well, it's just becoming a wider regional, a clusterfuck. I'm sorry, but that's where we're at, right? So now there's a lot of kind of things going on in the background, particularly, but the last thing before I kind of give you guys my 2 cents, and I'll give you my analysis. We'll talk about each and every one of these things and kind of what I think's going on, and give you guys some background. But we got to talk about the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We're going to talk about M23 and what's going on there, because pretty interesting announcement. We have United States PMC contractors from Vectis Global. These are the same guys that were in Israel and these guys, it's the, PMCs, your Blackwater types, um, and they're reportedly supporting the Congolese army, or the FARDC, in an offensive against Rwandan-backed M23 militias in South Kivu. So this is pretty significant. Eric Prince, who is the guy who started this, he's a private PMC contractor. He's deployed his contractors and drone operators to assist the FARDC in securing the town of Uvira, which was recently taken back after M23 forces withdrew, following pressure from U.S. diplomats. So the FARDC has increased its operations. It's using drones and artillery and support from Vectis to kind of step up its assaults on M23. And the fighting has intensified, particularly around the Minebwe region. And I have a map I'll show you guys here as well, make it a little bit more sense. But, we're seeing that the FARDC has regained several villages, but they're displacing a lot of civilians, and there's civilian casualties and all that lovely stuff. They generally, the government doesn't really care all that much in in a lot of these countries about civilian casualties, and neither does Vectis. So unfortunately, these guys are pretty awful people as well. Um, their involvement in the DRC, it's representative of a dynamic that we're starting to see throughout Africa. And I want you guys to think of these guys not as like private. I want you guys to think of these dudes as Wagner. Okay. This is Wagner. This is the American Wagner group. Okay. This is what this is. So, the deployment itself is not sanctioned by the United States, but it's part of a, minerals for security arrangement that we've seen. Is the DRC has lost access to like their valuable minerals. They've lost access to a lot of what their exports come through, which is these rare earth mineral exports. And it's going to dramatically affect their ability to, have a solid GDP, to economically involve themselves in a larger world. And it also affects the entire global supply chain, because 15% in some cases of the world's supply of certain minerals like cobalt or coltan are found in the DRC. So they're talking about down here where a lot of this fighting is going on. And this is where you're seeing Minembwe down here by Kalingi, tons of fighting down here where they're trying to secure southern Kivu. However, up here in the north where Bukavu is and all of this is very, very much firmly M23. And M23 is continuing to advance, particularly west in a lot of these places toward Mwenga as well. So in general, I've long been of the opinion that the side with momentum here has been M23. It remains M23. And Rwanda, these guys are really well equipped, and the DRC is not. They're losing money hand over fist, while the M23 exports the minerals and rare materials that they seize to bankroll themselves, and Rwanda helps them do it. So, there was supposedly a ceasefire here that was mediated recently, and M23 has said they're not going to engage with that ceasefire. So the movement rejected the ceasefire proposal by an Angolan president, Joao Lourenco. Despite the Congolese government's acceptance, the AFC M23 spokesperson, Oscar Belinda, stated that the group was not consulted and is focused on the ongoing Qatar-mediated peace talks, which have established a structured mechanism for a ceasefire. The Congolese government confirmed a ceasefire set to take effect on February 18th, but M23 is not going to honor that. They've basically accused the Congolese government for pursuing a strategy of diplomatic fragmentation. It undermines the coherent process they're doing on right now, which has been these Qatar-mediated peace talks. that were originally taking place between M23, Rwanda, and the DRC. However, the American peace talks that have basically been established as mineral extraction deals, well, those are still those were signed, and you basically have parallel negotiations where they're not really negotiating with M23. Rwanda can claim they can claim deniability. They can claim that they don't support M23, even if the UN says they are. Like, there's not really any way that they can forcibly prove that, right? So, I mean, they can, but that doesn't mean Rwanda is going to stop. Who's going to stop them, right? That's the whole thing, is who's going to stop them? And that's not an answer that we really have. So the trend we're seeing here that I want to point out when I'm going to transition here into my analysis now that we've talked about all these different countries, because there's an important trend that I want to point out here. And it's that, one, the groups that are the insurgent groups themselves have the momentum. Every single one of these conflicts, the governments are responding. They're not attacking. There's a massacre, the government responds. They seize a village, the government responds. Fighting a war, generally speaking, it's really important that whoever has the initiative really keeps on that. The situation really is, when you are a centralized government and you're fighting an asymmetric insurgency, you're going to have a harder time. You need the money from the resources that they seize to pay your soldiers. If you can't pay your soldiers, you can't help you. So why is the United States sending 200 troops to Nigeria? Why is the United States providing basically a Wagner group to the DRC? Well, the answer, if you pay attention, if you're a long time watcher of the show, it has to do what's in the dirt. It's always what's in the dirt. So Nigeria, the Christian genocide is not about a Christian genocide. In fact, they're not targeting Christians. Like, it's entirely indiscriminate, the killing, and it has everything to do with the just general situation in Nigeria with water shortage, famine, and just a lack of access to essential things one needs to live, which is not so uncommon in Africa, unfortunately. But this has allowed them to declare Nigeria on October 31st, back of last year. They declared it as a country of particular concern. So they used a law called the International Religious Freedom Act. Like, it's so ridiculous. And so they are they're going in and they're saying they're going to protect these Christians from this genocide that is not happening. It's not a genocide. You know what is a genocide? Gaza is a genocide. You know what is a genocide? Probably what the United States is doing right now to all of the people that they're arresting, and we don't know where they're going, as they're being shoved en masse into big metal warehouses that they're buying for billions of dollars to pay companies like Vectis to go and do these kind of things. So that's what a genocide is. The United States is perpetrating genocide on the people here, because I am one that I believe that it will come out that they have killed many thousands of people, and that's just, unfortunately, the criticism here on genocide. Not to mention the indiscriminate bombing of over 100 people in Yemen. It just, the United States commits war crimes every day. Every day we're killing people, innocent people, just as many as these terrorists are. It's really disgusting from an American perspective. But since they've done this, this allows them to go into the country. This allowed them to strike on Christmas in Nigeria. This has been a response to basically escalating Boko Haram tension, but it's not necessarily Boko Haram that's the problem to them. It's the interruption to the supply of valuable minerals. And that's where we need to be looking in particular, is why is the United States involved? The United States has its hands all over the world, but why is it choosing to invade or to engage in Nigeria? Now, the reason in this particular case has to do with lithium. Nigeria has a lot of lithium, and that is what Nobody is. That's the reason we're there, right? Because Nigeria has the potential to produce 10% of the world's necessary lithium supply. Right now, that's something that United States is extremely hamstringed right now. The United States is struggling to even have it's struggling. The resource stockpile, Chinese dominance over rare earth mineral processing, as well as just extraction, is stifling. The United States is suffocating under its own dependency on China. And when the United States decided to go pariah status, then China pretty much cut off the United States. And that's where you're seeing the United States now pivot. I always frame this, if you frame this from desperation, the United States getting involved in Nigeria is an act of desperation. The United States is critically worried about alternative access to supply chains here. And if they lose access to Africa, right? The first peace deal between Rwanda and the DRC was signed in the White House alongside a special deal that was really essentially about creating a corridor of trade for the United States to extract rare earth minerals and metals and all of the things that China dominates from the DRC. So when the DRC begins to lose, and next you start to see them bringing in American contractors, PMCs, Israeli, this kind of gray area where you're seeing American Wagner. They've gotten to the point where they can't use military force, so they're going to start using underhanded, really just toxic gray area intervention, which is never good for a region. And these dudes are all these guys tend to be war criminals. Blackwater, they operate with impunity. They're not beholden to anyone, and it's a huge problem. In general, I don't think PMCs really should even exist. That's just my take. But you shouldn't have private military militias. I just don't think you should have militias that are as well armed as a lot of these militaries, particularly in some case more so than the militaries. So it's one of the things too that contributes to weapons trafficking and all these stuff is if you can be a private military group and purchase this stuff, it just isn't safe. Is the introduction of Vectis into the DRC going to make a difference? I don't think so. I don't think so. And the reason is I just don't think that a private military contractor is not going to be able to overcome the full backing of the Rwandan government. I don't think so. And this is not where they're used to operating. This is not their turf. This is not what they do. And I see too little too late. We've seen the maps. We've been looking at the DRC. The United States' desperate desire to somehow rapidly solve ethnic and regional tensions that go back decades so they can extract resources is just bonkers. It totally lost the plot. The United States government has entirely lost the plot, particularly in Africa. Like, you can't just bomb these people away. You can't send 200 troops. You can't send Blackwater or Vectis into a country you don't understand and expect anything to happen. These guys are just going to drone strike and kill more civilians. They're going to displace more people. Their goal, basically, there's a couple different kind of, I thought it was interestingly described here, but you have different jobs that these Vectis guys are supposed to do. The first being drone warfare. But the more interesting one is called tax brigades. Yes, tax brigades. So these units are deployed in Katanga, and their job is to secure industrial mining sites and curb smuggling, at which the Nigerian government is the Congolese government is unable to secure these sites. So the people who want to extract it, they are coming into the region with their own private contractors, and they're going to try and do it. Could they get wiped out? I mean, I'm sure some of these guys are going to die. I don't think M23 is like anything. M23 is unlike any other insurgency in Africa in that they are really pretty much just a extension of the Rwandan military. And Rwanda's not at war with like another country, right? It's not Sudan. It's not, a lot of these other Sahel countries. No, Rwanda's pretty much able to focus on what it's doing in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And there's no reason that, it's one thing to kind of send some people to support the level of an offensive that is going to be required. And just because I just want to show you guys this map again, because it's one of those things where when you have something like this, okay, when you have a region like this and you're looking at this, these are new gains. Anywhere you're seeing these yellow lines, okay, this is since November of 2025. They left Uvira only because they chose to. They could come back, right? A big part of these guys coming in is they want to secure Uvira because we've been over this crossroads here is essential. It's Lake Kivu region as well, Bukavu, okay? All of these, like 70% of the world's available coltan is in this region, right? So this is one of those places where every single mine that M23 holds is of extreme value. And that stuff can just leave right here through Bukavu, going to Rwanda, and they mix that with their exports and they're funding themselves. They're pushing still they're pushing west. Still they're pushing south. The DRC loses. It'll take something back, but it'll lose some more. And to be honest with you, no amount of U.S. intervention is going to change that. Now, the more concerning thing here, to be honest with you, obviously, is do I think that what are we seeing? We're seeing U.S. intervention increase across Africa. Why? Because the United States is worried about its supply chain of critical minerals, and it can't replace any of its weapons, and its weapons backlog is in the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, and they still owe 32 billions in weapons to Taiwan. They still owe billions in weapons to the EU. They can't provide any of their allies with, quote, anything because the United States military-industrial complex is a lame duck without a solid supply chain. No amount of money allocated at the last minute is going to change that. So they're resorting to desperate measures. Like I always frame this as desperate. This is a desperate move by the United States to try and secure access over regional resources, but it's not going to be nearly as effective. Honestly, the most concerning thing in Africa right now, I think, in terms of larger scale conflict, is this trouble brewing with Ethiopia and Eritrea, because it does absolutely run the risk of becoming a large scale conflict in which Sudan and the Ethiopian Tigray war merge into one, where the RSF is fighting alongside Ethiopia in a larger scale war. And if that happens, we're going to see a real manifestation of basically the larger conflict, which is the Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt coalition on one side fighting against the UAE, the RSF, Ethiopia. And I don't know. Again, this is my feeling. I feel like Israel is backing the UAE. I feel like they have something going on together. There's been reports of them using Israeli air bases, UAE using Israeli air bases to support the RSF. And of course, you have the whole Somaliland question where the UAE had put a lot of work into Somaliland, and they're facilitating kind of discussions between Israel and them. So we just really need to be pretty aware of the fact that this country here, this could spark a regional conflict. And if that is the case, which way is up, which way is down, that could become very confusing. It'll turn off the region. It'll turn off the region. You're not going to have any kind of consistent supply chain, right? A great example is when Thailand and Cambodia went to war very briefly. When they went to war very briefly, it paralyzed over $400 billion in geopolitical semiconductor trade, right? The Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing, right? The Thailand Plus One initiative, where they outsource testing and assembly to Thailand and Cambodia. Erdogan and MBS at the moment, they've signed, they're in a coalition against the UAE. So Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia are all working together to try and curb the UAE's influence in the region. Alliances are really tricky, and it's one of those things too where we're looking at the reality is the United States is really meddling everywhere, and the reason it's meddling everywhere is because it doesn't know where it's going to work. So I always say, like, as we go through the week, we're going to look at different parts of the world too. The United States is just throwing shit at the wall to see if it sticks. It's not really sticking, right? Like and we still don't really know what the hell they're doing in Iran, right? We still don't really know what they're doing in Iran. And the region is already extremely unstable, right? Like if you look at the actual whole region, a map of the region, Iran, Sudan, all of these places, they're in the same little bubble. And the African Union is non-functional. It's basically a relic. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It can't work, and it's underfunded. The governments are weak, and the insurgencies are asymmetrical. They're stronger, and they exist all over. Africa is inherently unstable, and no amount of Western involvement is going to stabilize Africa. In fact, the abolition of U.S. aid, the weakening of the UN intentionally, and all these programs, like the UN is also pretty much non-functional. So, it does fairly well in providing aid, but if you can't protect those aid sites, which is a huge problem, then it's just going to get even worse. So regionally, what do I want you to take away from Africa? Like, what do I want you to take away from this today? I want you to take away this. I want you to take away that Africa, particularly the Sahel region, is important because of the resources available there. The same remains true for the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Paramilitary groups are more powerful than they've ever been. They're better funded than they've ever been. And existing governments are really struggling to stamp out these insurgencies. In fact, they declare parallel governments all the time. They take a town over and they govern it. They take over an oil refinery and they sell the oil. These things affect the country itself. It affects the GDP. It affects their exports. If a country is entirely dependent on exporting oil, and then the terrorist organizations or the insurgency goes and seizes all the oil fields, that's useless to them. They could still be the government, but they have no revenue. The United States government wants to go into Africa, and they want to try and outcompete and or gain de facto control over these African resources to gain leverage over China. It's not going to work as well as they think. And if Ethiopia and Eritrea go to war over the Tigray region, Africa is going to turn into it's a bomb. North Africa, the Sahel, the Red Sea, there's a competition there. There's a power struggle going on there that has everything not to do with Africa. It's about other. Africa is trying to set itself straight while the West continues to try and extract, and that model itself is unstable, and it cannot hold. It will not hold, and we're going to see something pretty crazy here in 2026. I don't know if that's the toppling of governments. I don't know if that's the Sahel war on a large scale. but we're going to see it all boil over. And we'll kind of keep an eye on it. It's going to have large, profound effects for the world's global supply chain. Of that much, I'm certain. And it will continue to be something we really need to watch out for in terms of U.S. intervention or Western intervention in general, because capital ownership really doesn't guarantee returns on your investment in Africa. And that's a big problem for these Western countries, right? That's a big problem for these billionaires who own mines and own things, but they don't want to go there because, God forbid, I mean, like, they treat these people horribly. So that's where we're at in Africa right now. And I'm concerned about U.S. intervention. I'm particularly concerned about this development of Vectis kind of acting as a new Wagner for the United States. As the United States continues to deteriorate from being a questionable but fairly dependable partner and promoter of democracy, even if it was hypocritical in many ways, it's now very much transitioning into a kind of a gray area, fascist interventionist state. It's really meddling where it shouldn't. And so we are definitely going to see the effects of that as it becomes unstable. So it could turn the side against M23, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think M23 is no amount of private military contractors, short of like an actual army. But they don't have that. At that point, the U.S. is basically sending in troops. So, but the Board of Peace and the UN might be bankrupt by July. So we really just don't know. We really just don't know. So that's what we got going on. That's Africa, folks. There's a lot more to cover, but of course, I can't do it all in one day. So I hope I was able to give you guys kind of a quick little look at the regional picture and why you should care about what the United States is doing. The United States should remove all troops. The United States should not engage with anything to do with Africa. The United States needs to get the hell out of Africa. That's what needs to happen. If you're in the U.S. or if you're in a different country, like the United States needs to leave Africa. The United States needs to stop meddling around the world, and the United States it's making everything worse. So the United States just needs to mind its own freaking business. So thank you all so very much for coming today. And the newsletter is going to be a little different. Like I said, it's going to be a little shorter. It's going to be under here. And you got all my analysis from me. So you can come in and get that here anytime. So watch the video as well. And then go down and skim through the newsletter. It's a lot shorter. And hopefully it's a better format for you guys and more accessible. So thank you guys all so much for joining me today. Whether you're watching me on any of the Banner and Backbone networks, whether you're watching me here on Substack, any of those, make sure you go ahead and take this opportunity to please subscribe and join me here on Substack as well. So you can see here, there's a QR code here on the screen. You can go ahead and scan that there, and it'll take you over to my profile over on Substack where you can subscribe to the Firebrand project. And there's a lot of news we try and cover, and there's a lot of cool things I'm working on, right? So this isn't the only thing I do. And, in the background, this is what I've been really committed to doing, and I really enjoy informing you guys on geopolitics, but we work on other things. And so make sure you subscribe to the Firebrand project, and you can get a lot of stuff, because I do focus a lot on corporate corruption and scandal and the billionaire class and all of the horrible, underhanded, slighted things they do. And we're going to continue to, work on that and do a lot more in that world. So, make sure you subscribe as we evolve through 2026. If you want to support me with the paid subscription, it's really helpful. It helps us keep going, helps me keep doing the work. So $6 a month, you can go ahead and become a paid subscriber there. And I would really appreciate your help in that regard. On the newsletter here in the profile, if you're watching the video, you can go to my profile, my link. You can go there and click on the Buy Me a Coffee link to make a one-time donation if you want to support me there as well. With all that said, my friends, Thank you so much for watching the Firebrand Report live. This has been World on Fire, breaking news around the world, African Spotlight. And I will see you guys tomorrow where we're going to go over the United States and the EU. So don't miss that episode as well. And I look forward to seeing you then. So make sure you hit that heart button. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you become a subscriber in whatever capacity you can, whether that's paid or free. And thank you also very much for joining me. Remember, the most important thing you can do is to take what we talked about today, go do the Firebrand thing, go talk about it with other folks, bring it to their attention. We want to change the international dialogue. We do that one conversation at a time. So until then, remember, go do your part, Firebrands. We're in all this together, wherever you are around the world. And burn bright, resist, and I will see you all